Well, I first encountered him at the beginning of the famous week on Ben Nevis in 1960. I'd gone up there for the Saturday. I was just 17 years old and didn't really know anything. And it's my first visit to the CIC hut as well, and my first visit to the Ben. And it was in this immaculate, brilliant condition. And then inside the dark and dingy hut, there were these strange troglodytes who didn't get up in the morning and who ate other people's food. And that was the first time I encountered him. I think he ate half my breakfast, so it wasn't a particularly promising meeting.
Smith and Marshall went up the Ben February the 6th was the first day, and they spent, I think, a total of 8 days up there. For these two to spend 7 or 8 days up there climbing, and climbing hard climbs, most of which were first ascents, was actually a tour de force physically. It was like they're a degree at least harder and better than I've ever been.
For these guys, doing a new route was what you did. Yeah? Only idiots did other people's routes. Yeah, the thing to do, that's what climbing was, going where people hadn't gone before. And I think to the extent there's a real truth in that. That's the heart of climbing, is going where people haven't gone before. If you're not doing that, you're not really climbing.
When I wrote that history of Ben Nevis, I've called chapter 9, which includes that week, the Pinnacle, because for me it was the very pinnacle of Scottish winter mountaineering. And it became set in concrete because about 10 years after they'd done that week, front pointing came in, step cutting was no longer required. So that week of climbing up there is an Olympic record, if you like, that will never be beaten.
If you're going to talk about contribution to Scottish mountaineering, and indeed to the whole kind of legacy of mountaineering in Scotland, then Jimmy Marshall's name must come very close to the top of the list.
So Jimmy really was one of the great pioneers of Scottish climbing. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think that he really takes his place amongst all the great mountaineers that have climbed and pioneered the Scottish crags.
He's a hero. That's a funny four-letter word, and some people would like to debase the word, but he's genuinely a hero. And he's someone with whom I and everyone I know has vast respect for, because of his doings, because of his writings, and because he doesn't seem to have put a foot wrong.
I mean, what he did in the 50s and sort of early 60s with the likes of Robin Smith and Dougal Haston and Big Ellie and those guys from the climbing club in Curry, or that bunch of guys from Curry. I mean, it really was astounding.
Jimmy really brought together a lot of the other people from that generation of the early 60s. Like, he encouraged a lot of the young guys coming out of like the shipyards in Glasgow, got them into climbing and gave them like a bit of a new life, They would escape the city and go out into the mountains, and that's what climbing is all about for a lot of people. So
I think Jimmy's real effort was to bring people together, to be the glue that brought very difficult people, Moriarty, Haston, Stenhouse, Smith, and achieved together, that group of 6 achieved tremendous things.
When I went to Jimmy's house to interview him for The Edge, with great pride, he showed me a certificate that he'd been given, giving him honorary membership of the Craigdhu Club. And it really is quite astounding that this working men's group of, of guys from Clydeside should honour a pretty middle-class architect from Edinburgh in such a way. And I don't, as far as I know, nobody else has been honoured in the same way. And I know Jimmy's very, very proud of that relationship with the guys from the Craigdhu.
So he bridged both worlds, in other words. He bridged the establishment, he bridged the other side, the anarchic side, and he got on very well with both of them. And he still does. Probably he gets on well with just about anybody who's genuinely interested in the outdoors and mountaineering.
The Craigdhu broke all the rules by making him an honorary member. I think they broke about 4 rules. You couldn't have been a member of the SMC, and you couldn't be an honorary member, and you mustn't be a woman. And they had a lot of rules, more rules than members.
And he was instrumental a lot in getting a lot of these new routes done, because he had a good eye for a climb. And with the kind of young lads, they called him the old man then. Well, he's outlived them all.
As part of that film on the Edge, we took Jimmy Marshall and John McLean, one of the great stalwarts of the Craigdhu Club, to climb in Buccleuch. And John is a big, very strong bulldog of a man, and kind of thrutches his way up there, and it's all power and strength. But when Jimmy came to climb, he was, even at this stage, I think he was in his 60s at that time, he was like a ballet dancer. Like a lot of the modern climbers today, he kind of floated up the route. I know when Richard Else was editing the film, he decided just to take out all the commentary and let Jimmy just float up that rock with some beautiful music behind him. And for me, the highlight of that whole series of The Edge was Jimmy Marshall floating up Bludger's Revelation just so effortlessly, with that sound of music in the background. It was just magic.
The consummate skill with which Jimmy moved over rock and ice was something wondrous to behold, And how can we compare him in the likes of a world-class athlete who we've got now, Usain Bolt, the world-class sprinter. Jimmy was the Usain Bolt of the ice climbing world, no question about it, no question about it.
He had a trick of getting into balance in places where other people wouldn't manage it. I think he was a bit kind of low, in centre of gravity. I think there might be something a bit odd about his centre of gravity. Could be. Big bum, something like that.
Jimmy was a master of, step cutting and moving in ice, because we didn't have the aids, so he was a master at this. The difficulty and enterprise that was involved in doing these routes then with the poor equipment and whatnot. And a lot of modern climbers don't realise that, because it was pretty crappy stuff we were using.
The famous thing was that he could lead step cutting his way up a pitch faster than everyone else could second. So he was actually having to cut all of the steps, and in the same time people would just struggle up behind them using his handholds and take the same amount of time.
Oh, absolutely terrific. I mean, just the best possible climbing partner you could ever have. I mean, it was an absolute pleasure to climb with him. Yeah. And you never thought that anything was going to go wrong either, Jimmy was just an excellent person to climb with. And I mean, at that time, it's different now, of course, but at that time, you weren't supposed to fall off things. It was a bad idea. You'd die, probably.
This award's going to an absolutely dedicated mountaineer, who I think is terrific, and he's done so much for Scotland.
I mean, Jimmy's an amateur climber, you know, as I was. And we do it for love, not for money or for fame.
He's been an inspiration to me and many other climbers I know of my generation. He made what was an exciting sport even more exciting by leaving behind this legacy of major classic climbs, both summer and winter. And it's been my rare privilege to have managed to succeed in climbing some of them. And it's enriched my life beyond belief. And I wish Jimmy the very best. And I think this award is completely justifiable for Jimmy. You couldn't find a better recipient. I know he'll be very modest and slightly embarrassed, but he'll wear it with pride, I'm sure.
And there's nobody who deserves it more, no. He's the king of the Ben.